How accurate are the Ten Commandments then to get us back on track?
Yeah, so we will be talking about what's called morals. And you can define morals as God's definition of what is true and false, or God's definition of what is right or wrong. And God did create a set of laws that determine right and wrong. And so we need to discuss some of those. Now, some of the ones included in the Ten Commandments have no bearing on God's thoughts, but some of them do have some bearing. So one of those was the law not to murder anybody, of course. So that was because it would infringe upon other people's free will. So that certainly is a moral law from the Ten Commandments that is right, that God has defined as right. But there are other ones like honour your father and your mother, which is another law from the Ten Commandments, which God doesn't agree with. The reason why God doesn't agree with that is because what happens when the honour of your mother and father precludes your honour of God's law? In other words, what happens when your mum and dad don't believe in the law? Should you still honour them? There's a difference between honouring them and in terms of honouring them as a person, in terms of saying they have the right to make their own decisions and make their own laws, and honouring what they tell you to do. Because if they tell you to break the law, you can't honour that, all right? And unless you want to get a penalty of that. So there are obviously man-made laws, or you could say man-made constructs or ideas which we think are law, but have no bearing on what God treats as law, right? So it's very important to understand that when we talk about law here, we're talking about the laws God established, not the laws of humans. So, of course, we want to discover what they are, because the more we can live in harmony with them, the happier we'll be, obviously. But we also mustn't assume that just because humans have made a whole series of laws, that it means that they are justified in doing so, or that those laws are in agreement with God's. Because obviously there's going to be laws that humans make that are in complete disagreement with God's. Yeah? So we can talk about that a little